The Pieces Lie Where They Fell by Evil Humor. Edited and co-authored by Anon E. Mouse Jr. Read for you by My Name is R. Chapter 21. Page Turner. Paige turned her head to look at the door for the Colt's closing, hoping that Knight would be okay. He was really struggling to keep it together, and she knew that Knight wasn't the type to ask random people for help. Walking with only candles for their light source, as the fake sun was quite bright even with the blinds drawn, Paige looked at the Owie and frowned. "Victual," she began, only for the Owie to hush her. "Wait until we get into our room, okay?" she said, reaching into her pack to fish out a key. "I could really use a nice bed and a good night's sleep." "Ditto." Vixley yawned again, making Paige feel tired as well. "I hope you don't mind, but I'm taking the bed." "Of course not," Paige said, shaking her head. "You're much larger than me, and you'd be completely uncomfortable on the cot." She then turned her head to Victual as she opened the door. "The same for you, Victual," she said. "Right," Victual said, as she dropped her pack into the corner of the room before hopping up onto a bed, curling up on it as a cat would do, with her tail curling around her body. "So what is it?" "Why did you make Knight do the first shift? He was still a bit shaken about the fact he killed some pony tonight," Paige said, getting comfortable on the cot as she removed her bags. "Well, first off, I didn't know that about Knight. He didn't say anything about it," Victual said, flicking her left ear. "If he did, I'd have asked Rex to take the first shift. And secondly, look, Wind just woke up from his element nap thing after blowing up that power plant, and Rex spent a lot of that time making sure Wind was okay and we knew how to treat each other in the future. I thought it would be best to give them a break, and Knight is a bat pony. Doesn't he have great night vision and good hearing?" "Well, yes, but," Paige said, only for Vixley to speak up after she placed her hammers to the side. "Knight's a big boy, and he only has an hour to stay awake," the Minotaur said, rubbing her eye. "Once he's got some sleep, he'll be good. Now to the important question, girls." Vixley leaned forwards, with Victual making a mewing sound in confusion. "Who's doing the first rock for us? Rock, paper, scissors?" "First off, I have hooves," Paige said with a chuckle, shaking her head at Vixley. "And didn't Victual say she'll take the first shift?" "But I just got comfy," she pouted, detangling herself and moving to stand by the door. "Paige, you've got the element of kindness, right? So why don't you be kind for me and take my first shift?" "That may be true, but I'm not going to deny myself some good night's sleep," Paige lied, sticking out her tongue while Vixley giggled at Victual's pouting. While Paige was certain the mare downstairs wasn't a threat, she knew that Knight wasn't doing that well, and there was nothing she could do about it. Rather than worry and fret for an hour while being unable to go help her colt friend, she would take the chance to recharge herself and be ready to deal with a similarly refreshed Nightblade in the morning. It wasn't the option she liked, but if she played her hoof too much, the others might get wise about her. She was already cautious of Rex being so smart, and now that Windbreaker had told them he had the element of honesty, she was going to make double sure that her secrets stayed secrets. Still, it was quite late, and before her stomach decided to grumble for supper, she tied off her magic and crawled onto the cot. Pulling the blanket over herself, she found herself taken away to her Grace Luna's realm of dreams in seconds, though it was not easy sleeping, as her dreams were unsettling. Though when Victual woke her up for her shift, Paige could not remember any of them. It was early in the morning when they all piled into the colt's room, with Night drooping over his cot and yawning widely. It was Windbreaker that told them what happened. Night here kept dozing off for his shift, and he wasn't sure what time it was, so he kept at it. Windbreaker reached over to lightly punch Night in his foreleg, with Night just glaring at the griffin. I finally caught on when he fell out of the cot on his face and woke us up. "Thank you for sharing, Windbreaker," Night snarked through a yawn, his wings fluttering a bit before pulling them against his sides. "I also did not have a good night's sleep." "Likewise, Nightblade," Rex said, shaking his head. "Although I cannot remember my dreams, they were unpleasant." "Same here," Paige said, with everyone else nodding their heads. "Does anyone remember them?" "Yes," Night said, before nuzzling her. "I don't want to talk about it." Paige nuzzled back, before looking at everyone who was now silent. "Look, I will go get some food, and then we'll plan out what we do today, okay?" she asked, as she got up, causing Night to faceplant onto the cot. "Be careful, there might be some guards lurking about," Vittel said, with Night forcing himself upright with concern on his face. Paige simply shook her head and covered Night with the blanket, using her magic. "I will be fine, and you get some rest, Night," she said, as she stepped out of the room and closed the door behind her. Looking into a nearby mirror and taking some time to fix her appearance a bit, smiling as she liked what she saw, and trotted down to the stairs to see the owner looking straight at her. The room was empty, which meant they could talk freely. "I trust your rest was good?" she asked, bowing her head slightly. "The rest was impeccable," Paige replied, with the owner flashing her a smile, and called out to her waitress to bring the food over for her and her entire group. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, as the food platters piled up in front of Paige, with her mouth watering a bit at the smell of it. "Nothing at all," the owner said, shaking her head as she placed a small bag of coins over to her. "This is your Bat Pony's money from last night. Take it. I don't need it, and I feel you will." "Thank you," she said, pushing the money into her saddlebag, wondering how she would spin this without raising suspicion from the rest of the group. "If I may ask," the old mare began, before Paige cut her off with a sharp "no." The elder of the two tsked, shaking her head. "If you will have my opinion, I thank you, but no," Paige repeated herself, before flashing a smile at her. "Don't get me wrong, I have thought of it with Nighty in the past, but no." Reaching with her magic to grab the food, the door to the inn opened up, and two Celestia guards walked in. Paige's heart skipped a beat as they walked right up to the counter, and one of the stallions said, "Excuse me, ma'ams, but we need to ask if there was a group of individuals seeking to stay here last night." The other guard produced a wanted picture for each of them, with her and Knight's cutie mark and a talent emblem on their posters, with a bounty of 50 lunas for information on each of them, and 10 Celestias in aiding their capture. "Have you, or your other guests, seen them?" "No, not at all," the inn owner said, shaking her head. "This dearie and her order are my only guests this week, despite yesterday being the honor festival." She sighed, shaking her head. "I will keep these posters up so my workers can look out for them, dear sirs." "Thank you very much, ma'am," the guard said, turning to face the deactivated changeling detector light. With a tilt of his head, his horn glowed a light orange, and the detector activated, flashing and removing all changeling magic in the inn. He then turned to Paige and placed a copy of the wanted pictures into her saddlebag. "Just take some so you and your order can refer to it, ma'am." "Thank you," Paige said, with a smile forced onto her face, picking up the food. "Have a good day, good sirs." She then started to walk up the stairs when a guard called out to her to stop where she was. Stifling a yelp of fear, Paige turned her head to look at the unicorn guard just below her. "Yes, sir?" "The old stallion would have our hides if he knew we let a mare carry all that food upstairs by herself," he chuckled, his magic reaching out to take some of the plates from her. "That's right he would, Glasses," the other guard laughed, smiling up at Paige. "Blazing Sun might be the bane of the dragons, and he goes after rogue dragons for kicks all the time. But darn, is he really ruthless when it comes to having us have proper manners. I mean, remember that time those cadets walked past those old mares when it rained the day before and everything was muddy? He was furious, gave the whole Middle Division the riot act, and went on about what it meant to be a Celestia Guard." Glasses chuckled a bit more. "And how he threatened to make Captain General Gentle Step, the bane of Tartarus, seem like full moon sweet surprise when it came to guard protocol?" Both of the guards shuddered at that, Paige understanding completely due to how brutal Captain General Gentle Step was reported to be when it came to how her guards were to act. She then found the guard looking at her, waiting for her permission to aid her. "Thank you, dear sirs, but no, I am quite fine," she said, flashing a smile at them. "Have a good day." She bowed her head, walking up the stairs with the guard walking out of the inn. She halted for a moment as she reached the door and looked into the mirror. Pausing to fix her appearance again, she opened the door to see that everyone was awake, with Night stirring and looking right at her. "I've got some good news and some bad news, everyone," she said, as she closed the door behind her and placed the food on the middle of the floor. Everyone more or less shrugged at this and joined her on the ground, as there was no other place to eat altogether. She smiled as she felt Night's warmth as he cuddled up next to her, hungrily eyeing the pitcher of mango juice the inn had included with their breakfast of eggs, pancakes, fruits, and gems. "So what's the good news?" Vidal asked, as she took some of the pancakes with a fork and began to eat, with everyone grabbing something to eat or drink, Night practically latching onto the mango juice. "The good news is that all of this food is free. The inn owner gave me a refund for some reason. And the bad news is that there is a large bounty on our heads, with 50 lunas apiece for information on us." "So, does anyone want some syrup?" she asked, with a wide, worried grin on her face, and hoping that they wouldn't be too shocked. "What?" Windbreaker squeaked out, the eggs he was eating hanging out of his beak. 50 lunas for information? A piece?" "Yes," she said, pulling out the posters and giving them to Vittel to look at, while taking some of the eggs for herself. "They do want us alive, so that is good, right?" "If only for our foe to do away with us later on in private," Rex said, taking some of the diamonds that the owner had provided for them, eating them as easily as Vix Lee was eating her salad. "This is far from optimal. How do we know the owner will not turn us in?" "How do we know this food isn't tainted to knock us out?" Vix Lee asked, looking at her food on her plate cautiously, Night pausing in his third glass of mango juice, halfway to his lips. "She gave me the posters," Paige said while looking at Windbreaker. "Trust me, I know this food is good and we can trust her." "If you say you trust her, Paige, I trust her," Night said, nuzzling against her. "I guess it wouldn't make sense for her to warn us," Vittel said, scratching her head with her tail hand. "Especially as it says we're dangerous," she said, as she gave the posters to Rex. "Even says we killed a few guards." Night blanched at this, with Paige shooting a look at the Owie Zodilus. Yes, Rex said as he peered at Windbreaker's poster. Nightblade is not the only one wanted for the murder of a guard. What? Wind asked in a small voice, reaching for the poster. Yes, that explosion you caused did cause the death of a couple of Magi of Stars guards, it seems, Rex said softly, fiddling with his vest. How are you handling this, Windbreaker? What? I don't know how to feel about this, Wind said, with everyone looking at him in concern, except for Knight, who was doing his utmost not to growl at the griffin. I mean, I know that Knight is okay with killing others, but I'm not. Paige pushed her hoof down on Knight's back to keep him in place, shooting a look at Vidal to say something. Didn't Knighty say he was still messed up about the fact he killed some guy? Vixley asked, looking at Knight. Yes, Knight said, face still red as he did his best to calm himself. Well, kinda, he stammered, looking off to one side. What got me was that I was okay with it. I never killed some pony before, and... Look, Vidal cut in, leaning into the middle of them. I don't think any of us have killed anyone before, but we can't let ourselves crack up and get nabbed by the guards. Yeah, Vixley said, reaching over to pat Knight on the back. We can worry about the mind business afterwards, right? Yeah, Knight lied, nuzzling into Paige for comfort and assurance. I'm good. Same, Wind said as well, looking nervous. But Paige, can I ask you something that's been bugging me? Paige felt her blood go cold, but she calmed herself and said, Of course. I mean, I've seen you do some pretty crazy stuff, and you're a librarian, Wind said, causing everyone to look at her, with Paige's heart thundering in her ears. I'm just curious, are you a flare? Paige felt a wave of relief flow through her. Of all the things he could have asked her, it was this. Oh, no, she giggled, shaking her head. I'm not a flare pony. I'm just a bit more talented than most. I mean, you wouldn't believe how well you develop your telekinesis when you need to put books away on shelves 3 times your height, and your personal flying machine isn't around. Paige nuzzled Knight's face, with him putting on a playful pout, causing everyone to laugh. Excuse me, Vixley said through her giggles, looking at her, but what's a flare? Well, that's just a pony who's really magically talented, Paige said, remembering the medical books she had read a while back. Basically, there are about 3 types of magic levels: hollow, normal, and flare. Hollow ponies, the term is actually Thaumatic Vinduatus, are ponies born with no magic whatsoever, although a number of them actually have Scootaloo disorder, or Thaumatic Moratus, and just didn't develop their magic until they were into adulthood. There are 2 types of flare: Brevis Salutu flares and Dum Salutu flares. Saluti. The first are ponies that peak really early before burning out their magic ability, and the other... Paige trailed off, remembering exactly what they were up against. The others are ponies who do not burn out and only continue to grow stronger over time, Rex said with a worried sigh. All of the captains are Dum Saluti flares, with Captain General being the strongest one to date. Only a few of the past Magi Supremes have ever come close to eclipsing her in the records. Aren't you guys overblowing this gentle trot? Vixley asked, looking around the room. I mean, those stories of her breaking out of Tartarus are just horn-bragging, right? No, Knight said, shaking his head. My brother and nephew are both in the Royal Guards, and due to how close my family is to the military, due to our mines, I can attest that the stories about her are true. So you mean that the story about how she was just a guard for 5 days before she went into Tartarus, spent 5 days in there, then came out of Caniminos Tataros Zontanos Inia Alithia. Paige found herself turning to face Rex for translations, as she did not speak Griko. Yes, and the others cannot understand you right now, Rex said before looking at Knight. Is it not also true that she was promoted to the position of Captain General because of this incident? It is. Knight bobbed his head after taking another sip from his glass of mango juice. From what I've heard, they figure that any pony that can deal with all the stuff that comes out of Tartarus and walk out with just a scar on her face and two of her fellow guards deserves to be the new Captain General. Vixley's eyes bulged a bit before she began to swear in Griko, walking up around the room while Vittel turned to face Nightblade. What about the rest of them? I know about Gentle Step due to stories those like me like to share and scare each other with. They are all Dum Saluti flares to start. Magi Supreme Violet Lulamoon is an expert thaumatic artificer, and revolutionized the guard's armor protection spells. Captain Standing Wall is not only the bane of the Minotaurs, she's also the strongest Earth Pony mage known to have ever lived, and is constantly redefining that field of magic. Holy Corona Blazing Sun is the bane of the dragons, and after settling one on fire and causing it to explode when he was our age, he is able to create a miniature sun, and he has held his position the longest of any captain. Full Moon Sweet Surprise has been recorded to being able to hold back a demon incursion on her own. A master tactician due to her reportedly unpredictable nature and high intelligence level, and is an adept at approved transformation magic. She may be a unicorn, but when she grows her wings, I've heard that she flies better than most Nox or Pegasus ponies, Knight said, taking a forkful of pancakes into his mouth before speaking again. And of course, Captain General Gentle Step is stronger than them, so there's that. I've heard she's been pushing for approval to let her guards train in Tartarus to give them proper experience in dealing with demons. Violet Lulamoon is also a published author, Paige added. She wrote a book called A Free Inquiry into the Properties of Magic Amulets when she was younger, before she became a captain. She blushed. I read the Grand Library's copy when I was still a filly, and I thought it was quite fascinating, especially that one amulet she mentioned that shone a light that could pierce through magical mists or shadows when used properly. She mentioned how it was once used to get through a mist barrier, sealing off an entire town when she was just a lieutenant. Great, just great, Vixley groaned as she sat down and drank straight from the pitcher of mango juice, much to Knight's displeasure. We have what amounts to freaking Heracles with the power of all the gods in 5 ponies with something that is tricking them into thinking we're the bad guys. She took another gulp from the pitcher and finished it off, giving Knight's glass a hungry look. Her colt friend simply took his glass and drank it down in one shot, coughing as it went down the wrong pipe. But we have half of what Balance said we needed to beat whoever is controlling them, Vittel said, while taking another pancake. So again, guys, we just need to make a plan to get out of Canterlot, and we should be good. We start by getting the tracker out of me, Windbreaker reminded them. That's why we're headed to the southeast quarter, after all. To find this doctor of yours, Rex added, pouring some sapphires he'd crushed into his coffee and taking a long sip from it. That operates in a temple towards the goddess Luna, he said with a bit of distaste. You don't believe in the goddesses, Rex? Paige Turner asked, the question slipping out of her mouth. No offense to you, Nightblade and Windbreaker, but no, I do not believe in such mythologies. They might have existed at one point, no doubt with the existence of the Virtuous Six being proven, but as their stories were exaggerated, such fabrications occurred to the original Celestia and Luna, Rex said, leaning inwards with his tail wagging as he was enjoying himself that he could speak his views. Everything that they were credited as being able to do can be explained by science. There are telescopes being crafted in northern Italy that will be able to see the orbit of the moon and prove that there is no thaumatic manipulation moving the celestial body. Rex tilted his head upright. Everything can be explained with logic. Magic is just the excuse word that the masses use when they are unable to properly understand something. Thaumatology may seem like magic due to its wide-reaching capabilities, but it can be taught and understood. That's why there is the Academy, to teach young minds about the science of thaumatology. Rex barked, showing more passion than any of them had ever heard from the Diamond Dog before. Vex blinked, before shaking her head, leaning forwards, with her head propped up on a fist. So, what's your beef with them, Rex? Nothing, save for the fact that they have rejected my application to be their alchemy professor, based on the fact that I am not a true equestrian, and thus could not have the proper understanding in how to make alchemic potions, or teach others in how to do alchemy, Rex grumbled. Ignore them, Rex. Vidal shrugged her shoulders, while picking up an apple with her tail hand, before pausing to look at it and wrinkle her nose. No doubt an Apple Clan product. Dropping the apple onto the tray, she picked up a papaya and held it to her mouth. You know you're good. That should be good enough. While self-acknowledgement is good and all, it does help the soul to know you are recognized for your deeds, and I do wish to teach others what I know. Rex let out a sigh, shaking his head. And while it is not your library, Page Turner, the Academy's library, has a wealth of knowledge that can truly help me expand on my knowledge. Then perhaps you need to try elsewhere, Rex, Vidal said, as she took a bite of her papaya. Back home in Tenochtitlan, there's always a room for another alchemist in the royal palace, and they will take whatever they can get. Do you think you could get me an appointment once all this is done? No! Vidal shouted, before coughing and looking off to the side with her cheeks darkening in embarrassment. Sorry, but no, I cannot go there. Too many people know me, and I'm not ready to deal with that mess. She then sighed with sadness and looked over at her left hand, flicking her fingers. Don't worry, Paige said with a smile, doing her best to ease the tension in the room. I don't think we'll head there unless things get really bad. She then turned her attention to everyone in the room. I think our plans, whatever they are, should begin with finishing our breakfast. With everyone grinning in agreement, they began to finish off the hearty breakfast with gusto, all well aware that things were only going to get more dangerous as time went on. Alright, first of all, the Greek translation is basically... let me get it so I can get the whole sentence. So you mean the story about how she was just a guard for 5 days before she went into Tartarus, spent 5 days in there, and then came out of Tartarus alive is true. Fairly easy to get from context clues. I had to translate it to the right alphabet before I could even sound it out, because it was written in the Greek alphabet, not the Arabic one, or was it Latin? English alphabet, also used for Spanish and many other languages, but not Greek. Also not Russian. Alright, and then the pony types. The hollow ponies are thaumatic, magic bereft. That makes sense. Scootaloo thingy, where the magic is delayed, is magic delayed. Short burst is the the ones that burn out. And then long burst are the flare ponies that don't burn out. Simple, I can see where the names come from. Find a naming strategy. Alright, so that's it for the translation issues. Now, about my theory with Paige being a changeling. There's a lot of information here that I noticed and looked into. First of all, it says she switched her magic. She tied her magic off. That could just mean she stopped using it, but that feels suspicious. But she did it before crawling into the cot, so if it was changeling, then that wouldn't make sense. She would still be transformed until she was undercover. Plus, when Vittel woke her up, it doesn't specify how, but a lot of times you'd notice if someone was completely under the covers, that would be kind of suspicious. So I don't know about that. And then there's the thing where it says she fixed her appearance on the way in and out, and none of the guards recognized her from the wanted posters. But there was that thing with the changeling light. And she doesn't appear to have been revealed by it, so assuming that those things work, which we've been given no indication to believe they don't work, that means she's not a changeling. But none of the evidence for her being a changeling goes away just because we've proven she isn't one, which makes me wonder just what she is. Yes. She's definitely got something going on. And them noticing her capability with magic made her worry about it. So, it's got something to do with her magical talents. She's not a flare. She doesn't appear to be a changeling. I'm running out of ideas for what it is. Okay, I think that's all for now. Hope you all enjoyed listening. Thanks for listening. Have a pleasant time. Goodbye, everyone.